This year's affordable Google phone is already shaping up to be phenomenal value compared to its bigger brother. Given the similar spec sheets but large gulf in price, plenty of Google fans will want to know which comes out on top in the Pixel 7 of his Pixel 7 showdown. The 7a is Google's highest-end budget phone to date. It shares a lot of features and capabilities with the rest of the Pixel 7 lineup, and it's only a little less premium. On the other hand, Google did not reinvent the wheel with the Pixel 7, but there was no Me Too. With great cameras, the reliable Tensor G2 chipset, and Google's wonderfully feature-filled software, the 7 earns its price tag again and again. So the question is, which one should you go for? Well, I've got you covered here. Here's which I think is more deserving of your money. With its slick metal frame that merges almost seamlessly into the rear camera shelf, the 7 is an evolution of the design Google introduced with the previous gen Pixel 6 and 6 Pro. The rear glass is still something of a fingerprint magnet, but give it a polish once in a while and it looks every bit the top-tier phone. There's an under-display fingerprint sensor for security and a punch-hole selfie cam in the top center of the display, just like the rest of the Pixel lineup. On first glance, the Pixel 7a is almost exactly the same, although Google has compromised a little to keep costs down. The rear camera shelf is now a separate piece to the metal frame and is slightly skinnier. It's still made of metal though. You can get one in charcoal, sea, snow, or coral colors, with all four using composite plastic at the rear instead of glass. It feels almost identical to the touch. Up front, the display bezels are a little bit thicker, but the under-display fingerprint sensor and punch-hole selfie cam remain unchanged. With its OLED panel stretched over 6.3 inches, the Pixel 7 has a physically larger display than the 7a, which is a more compact 6.1 inches. Both have the same 2400 by 1080 resolution though, as well as the same 20:9 aspect ratio and 90 Hz refresh rate. The cheaper phone has a higher pixel density as a result, so it's even less likely you'll be able to spot the individual pixels. Protection is on equal footing, with both phones getting Gorilla Glass Victus to stave off scratches. The larger Pixel 7 might take the edge on peak brightness, but there's really not much in it. And the pair each get bright enough for comfortable outdoor use. Viewing angles are just great on both, with very similar color handling. Stills and videos have plenty of pop, with vibrant colors typical of old panels. Unless you've got especially fat fingers and need every sliver of screen space going, there's no reason to feel you're getting an inferior display by opting for the Pixel 7a. Both phones pack decent stereo speakers that get loud enough for personal listening, but don't deliver much in the way of bass. Personal listening will be by Bluetooth, as there's no 3.5mm headphone port on either model. While both phones each have two rear cameras, they use different sensors. The Pixel 7 gets a 50 megapixels main snapper, with f/1.9 aperture, laser autofocus, and optical image stabilization, paired with a 12 megapixels f/2.2 ultrawide with a 114-degree field of view. The 7a, meanwhile, has a megapixels LED sensor with an f/1.9 aperture and OIS. Its secondary ultrawide has a megapixel sensor, a /2.2 aperture, and wider 120-degree field of view. Both have Google's excellent algorithmic image processing on board and use pixel binning on their main cameras for improved low-light photography compared to the previous generation. Real-tone skin mapping aims to deliver more accurate hues when shooting people of color, and night sight kicks in automatically for darker scenes. Laser autofocus helps the Pixel 7 lock onto targets a little faster, but the 7a is no slouch and both take fantastic daylight photos. Colors are well balanced, exposure is almost always on point, and HDR does a great job of balancing highlights and shadows. There's loads of detail on display too. Low light shots are pretty much on equal footing too, with only minor differences between the two phones. The Pixel 7 does have a few extra camera modes, including cinematic video, which blurs the background around your subject on the fly, and action pan, which adds motion effects to your still images. The 7a does at least get long exposure, a first for an A-series phone. Up front, the Pixel 7 has a 10.8 megapixels selfie cam, and the 7 has a 13 megapixel sensor. Again, there's very little in it in terms of quality. The Pixel 7 debuted Google's second-gen custom CPU, the Tensor G2. It's built on thinner chip architecture than the OG Tensor, runs at higher clock speeds, and is more power efficient to boot. Combined with 8 gigs of RAM, it has no trouble running Android 13 smoothly, handles games at high frame rates, and manages multitasking just fine. It isn't the most powerful processor in the phone world, but still holds its own among flagship competition. It can be had with either 128 or 256 gigs of onboard storage. The hardware has been passed on almost wholesale to the Pixel 7a, While storage is limited to just 128 gigs, the Tensor G2 and 8 gigs of RAM both make the cut, meaning this affordable phone can trade blows with rivals costing several times the price. It happily plays demanding games, feels wonderfully responsive in daily use, and has all the machine learning smarts of its bigger brother. Both phones have very similar battery capacities, with the cheaper 7 taking out a minor advantage. It has a typical 4835 to the Pixel 7's 4355 mAh. With a more power-efficient CPU and smaller display, it also lasts longer away from the mains, though not by a significant amount. Both can handle all-day use without needing to top up. The 7 takes the lead on here, managing 20 watts wired charging over USB-C to the 7 as 18 watts. It also supports 20 watts wireless charging from a compatible keypad, while the 7 can only manage 7.5 watts. Only the more expensive phone can reverse wireless charge other gadgets too. So the real question is, which one is the better value for money? The 7A is $100 cheaper, yet still takes superb pictures, is on par in terms of performance and battery life, and has near identical software. A slightly smaller screen, marginally slower charging speeds, and a few missing camera modes are the biggest differences. And none of them feel worth paying extra for. A rear panel made from plastic doesn't feel like a major step down from the Pixel 7's glass either, but that's also not an issue because we mostly use the back covers for our smartphones. For most shoppers, it's the Pixel 7 and that should be top of their list. So what are your thoughts about both the devices? Let us know your valuable thoughts below in the comment section. And if you enjoyed the video, then a sub to the channel will be massive, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See you for the next time. Peace out.